Should be live. Okay, so we are live. Dorene, hi.
Yes. Hello.
Let me check on my phone. This is new for us. We have technical support today, Dorene and I, which is
Mhm.
awesome. So I just want to see if I can see us live and then I'll be confirmed. Yes, we are. Okay, awesome.
Good.
So, yeah, there's new steps we have to jump through to go live through Zoom on Facebook, but I'm really glad to chat with you today, Doreen. And I know that people are very curious about interventions at tipping point, and you and I were just chatting a little bit before we jumped on here, and you were not the same person. When was this? Let's go back to, so first of all, thank you for being with me, and let's
Yeah.
just have, we have no script, we have no structure here. This is unfiltered. We're just going to chat about Doreen's experience kind of before you found us, what it was like to go through, and where you are now.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Um, this is my daughter, my adult daughter, who she's 37 now. She was married, two kids, struggled probably since she was 14-year-old with alcohol. I mean, it's been a process, huge process. The only time she actually was probably sober was during her pregnancies. So a lot of years that we struggled with this. And then it got worse, I'd say, in the last couple years. And we were desperate. And I was probably just on TikTok or Facebook and Googling help, what can I find for help? And I came across your site, and it was a miracle. Um, and then you were in the middle of writing your book, and I read that. And from there, we had a private meeting, talked about intervention, and that was all last year. I want to say right around February. So we're almost into a year.
Okay.
And then the intervention happened in May, the very beginning of May.
Can you remember you and I were just talking about how hard it is to remember how you
Oh,
were feeling. Well, you said mostly you can remember the feelings. So
yes.
just describe for people, because people watching might be right where you are. So if you just think back to how you were feeling.
Oh, desperate for one thing. Not only myself, my husband, my daughter,
The
the
sister.
oldest, the
Mhm.
sister, she was the one who was saying, "She's gonna die, mom. She's gonna die. She's not gonna make it to 40." We Yeah, it was like, we don't know what to do. We had, I think, prior to talking with you, I know it was New Year's Day, my husband had taken her to do inpatient in the hospital. She walked out. I think we did it 2 times. She walked out. She'd sober up enough to say, "Nope, I'm fine," and walk out. And we just felt it this we were defeated. We didn't know what to do.
You were helping with their kids.
Yep. We were helping with her kids. Her son, who was 8 at the time, was going through a horrible time with her, scared to death of what was happening with her. He was acting up at school. Her teenage daughter kind of had said, want nothing to do with it. Her husband was no help. He was like, this is who she is. This is what she's going to be. And we were like, no, we know that there's a person in there who is just crying to be out, who is
Right.
crying to get out of this situation, but helpless, all of us.
And I think that this is the case for every single family that we've ever met. And I'm pretty sure I'm remembering you guys were the same. When you considered the intervention, what did you think the chances were that she'd actually get sober?
Very low,
Yeah,
very low. We didn't know what to expect with an intervention.
right.
I mean, I had watched a few things on TV with the show, but I knew that that's not realistic. And we didn't know anyone who'd gone through an intervention either. So we were not quite sure what to expect.
Was it anything like TV?
No, no, not no. TV was so much more dramatic and, yes, emotional, of course. Um, but no, it wasn't like TV. What worked for us so well is our meetings prior to doing the intervention, and actually talking about how we're going to do this, talking about, I mean, Mike was fantastic in, no, you don't want to do that emotion there, or we would have done everything wrong, to be honest, because our emotions would have led us where he led us and
Mhm.
we followed, which
Was it
is
easy?
huge.
Was it easy or hard for you to allow someone to lead you once you decided to commit?
A little of both.
Mm,
I was grateful to have somebody leading it, but I was also so emotional and so wanting to just shout it out. Oh my God, Nicole, you're driving us crazy. And that wasn't what we were supposed to do. It wasn't about us.
no,
um,
but I love that you said both. And by the way, to anyone
yeah.
watching, I have no idea what Doreen's going to answer to any of these questions. And even though I know these aren't like TV, Doreen could say, yeah, it was a lot like TV. And that's what I love about these unscripted, unfiltered conversations is it's just your experience. And I told you before we got on, there's no right or wrong answer. I just really want to know truly your experience. And part of the reason to the viewers that I reached out for Doreen is she's texted us, Mike and I, recently a few times and with these beautiful shares. And so I thought it might be helpful for you, Doreen, to unpack your journey.
Mhm.
And certainly it'll be helpful to other people. Because, like you said, I didn't know anyone that had ever done an intervention.
Yeah.
And at Tipping Point, we're about sharing our journeys so that when you feel comfortable, not everybody did. And part of the reason I think you didn't trust that it would work is she was telling you no. Wasn't she telling you, I don't have a problem or I'm not going to go to treatment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. She could take care of it herself.
Mm,
She was still working, kind of, but calling in constantly. She was on the verge of losing her job, I'm sure. But she still felt she had control. She still felt like when she was ready, she would do it.
right.
And she may have thought she was ready, or I think at times she felt it, but then it wasn't there, you know?
I think I remember Jackie, her sister, saying in one of the meetings early on, I don't know if it was an intervention meeting or before you committed to the intervention. No, no, she said she'll never go back to treatment. I forget if it was your family, but it's often the sibling that's like, no, no, you don't understand. This is a
Yes.
different animal here. This is my sister. You don't understand. This is a different game. Because when you hear and see and from your person that no, you believe them.
Yep.
And
She
we're telling
Yeah.
you don't believe them.
Right. I When I talk to her now with Nicole, I said, "What were you so afraid of treatment?" She said, "I thought I was gonna be locked up. I thought that you were gonna throw away the key and I was gonna be locked up." She
For
said, "It
good.
wasn't anything like that, and for good, and for who knows when." And she said it wasn't like that at all, which really made a huge difference for her to stay, because that was the other thing, is once we get her there, she's staying. And for herself, she found out, no, I got a little more freedom than I thought I would have here. So,
So you're saying a few things that I want to point out that are different about our interventions. One is there's a whole lot of prep.
mhm,
The day of the intervention is what we're preparing for, but we're also preparing for after the day of the intervention. Our process is longer than any interventionist I've ever talked to. In fact, I talked to someone last week because I'm talking to interventionists all the time to understand how people work. And they're talking like under a week, the whole thing. And Mike worked with you guys for several months to
yes,
prepare to get her in treatment. And you know how a lot of people say, well, she leaves treatment or he leaves treatment. Well, that's because you don't have someone like Mike or Corey or myself working with the treatment facility
correct.
to keep them there or help the family know how to respond to the call, I'm leaving. Did any of that
Correct.
happen in your journey? Did she try to leave?
She did not try to leave, but what was really eye-opening for us is, I mean, you think the day of the intervention, you are praying she goes in that day. She didn't do that. That was a Saturday, and she didn't go in till the following Thursday. And during that entire time, Mike was so involved
Mhm.
and with her, because now Mike was introduced to her. They knew each other. It wasn't the secret that we were doing. And I mean, whatever talks he had with her that none of us were privileged to, and he's talking to us, and my daughter Jackie, her sister, was the one, and sister-in-law Mariah were the two that actually got her in, drove her to treatment. But it was all about what treatment center she wanted to go to that Mike was so involved with. And whatever they picked together was so successful, because I mean it really worked for her.
Mm.
And he would continue to stay on board through her inpatient, through her outpatient, and now she's in a sober living situation. And he was involved with which one she chose. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you're not left in the dark after at
No,
all.
it's far from that. And then we also had you enrolled in our 6-month recovery
Yes,
mastery program so you could get support from other families. You attended some of those?
I did. Yes.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
That was very helpful to us as well.
And
And
learning.
I also feel right now, if we had a situation, you both would be right there to help
Right,
us.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, so your daughter is doing well.
She's doing really well. Like she said, one day at a time, can't get ahead of myself. She created some hardship problems for her children, and the youngest one, 9, Ronan, is living with us now and going to school in our area, sees his dad on the weekends. And she's becoming more involved in his life as he's living here. She is managing a sober house right now.
She's managing the sober
Yeah. So she's had some eye openers. She's like, "Oh my gosh, mom, what I put you guys through."
because she's
And what
watching other people now.
yes. And she's had to keep them, in line and they're not always wanting to be in line. So she's learning a lot.
You're
She
reminding me.
still she
Go
still
ahead.
has issues with her teenage daughter that they need to mend quite a few things. But she knows that as well and it's going to take time. But yeah, so far, I mean, for her, this is her first time of treatment, which doesn't happen for everyone. I know that very well from what we learned. Um, but we're so grateful this is where it's at right now.
And you're all calmer.
Very much more calm. And
Now,
even my conversation with her, it was just, I think, a few months back that I realized, oh my gosh, we can actually have a conversation where mother daughter didn't exist in that conversation for years, years.
mm, couple of thoughts coming to mind. People are going to watch this and say, "Oh, that's not going to be us."
Hmm.
Would you have said that if you were watching this interview?
Absolutely. I I think the hardest part on that day of the intervention was when she walked away and walked out after listening. I mean, we all said our letters. She did. I was surprised at that. But her walking out was like, was this a failure? Is she not going to come back? Did we damage more of our relationship? Is she going to walk out and never speak with her family ever again? I mean, you don't know that stuff. And it was scary. But like I said, Mike really took the lead. And I mean, I was amazed that by Thursday, she was actually going.
Yeah.
And he had said that. He had warned us, you both had talked about, it may not happen that day. And again, had we tried to do this on our own? Absolutely not. She probably wouldn't
No.
even be speaking to us.
No, and I urge families to not do these things on their own.
Mm,
Actually, I'll admit, I tried to do one of my own early in my recovery because I was studying to be an interventionist. Epic fail. And
mhm,
I'll never do one on my own. I will call Mike or I'll call Corey and they'll call me or each other.
yeah,
We'll never do one on our own in our family because we're compromised emotionally and we don't know how to hold
mhm,
the boundaries and we don't know what's needed. um, all our experience in recovery, all our experience as an interventionist does not prepare us to do one in our own family. So I do believe they do more damage. They close the door for people. And a lot of times people,
mhm,
that's what they're trying to do. And I mean, to whatever you decide is, to the people watching, I'll never get in the way of anyone, but I just urge people to explore it for their family first. I'm so
mhm,
proud of our team and the integrity and the time. Mike is a facilitator of interventionists. He's trained us all, and he trains many. And I remember him telling us about the prep time and the day of, and we're preparing for a long-term change in conversation. We're not preparing for one day. We're preparing for
mhm,
you prepared if she said no. You knew,
right.
and you were all probably quiet. That's something that's really stands out to me. The normal loudmouth in the family is zipping it up and he's talking.
Yep. Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah, and I'm in the middle of one right now as a family member, and that change in dynamic is what's really powerful because your daughter, the identified person, notices everything's different,
Yep.
and that's what we're going for.
Yep.
And so, and then he worked his magic and asked you guys to step aside in that week. I'm sure he
Correct.
was telling you what to do or not do.
He was totally telling us. And and I think the other thing is that Mike was an addict himself. So it's one thing to talk to the other one where we're not, we're her family that she felt we were shaming her, doing whatever.
Right.
So I think that helped that he knew where she was coming from.
Mhm.
And the other thing is that whole week, he was so involved, not only talking to Nicole, but talking to my other daughter, Jackie, her sister, who was the one who ended up taking her and telling her how to
Mhm.
stay calm, what to do. I mean, they were all at that apartment of my daughter's, like a 48-hour time frame of Nicole deciding and falling apart and deciding. And Jackie said, I would never have been able to do it this way without Mike. I would have
Mhm.
been screaming, hollering. She said, I wanted to bop her over the head, throw her in the car, and send her to treatment. She said, that's
Right.
not what would have worked.
Right.
So Mike helping her was
And
wonderful too.
even if that week became months, and in
Right.
some cases, and no one's going to like this, but the reality is it's true. In some cases, it's a year or more.
Hmm.
But I have learned to use the phrase interventions with us always work. And part of the reason I do that is it doesn't mean people all stay sober long term. It means the family knows exactly what to do differently.
Yes.
So for example, if you heard she relapsed,
Hmm.
if you're being really honest, is part of your happiness for how it went tied to that she's now doing well?
Oh,
Rather,
yeah.
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 So I urge people, be careful to not
Right.
say, I'm happy because she's sober, because if she's not, it's just part of the journey.
Right.
And what would you do if she relapsed? How do you think you'd handle it and what would you do?
I'd probably call you guys again and
Yeah.
get back on board with the support of
Yep.
family because that's where we learned not to let our emotions. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a learning journey for us too.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where the help came in on just knowing what to do and what not to do. Because
Right.
again, it's her journey of
Right.
whether she wants to stay sober or not.
Hmm.
But it's us around her as a family learning how to make those boundaries. Boundaries are huge and they still are today. I
Hmm.
mean, just because she's sober doesn't mean that we don't have, like having taking her son for this season, this school year. It's like, okay, well, Nicole, you have to learn next year you're going to be on board to do it because we committed to a year and we still need to, have our lives too.
Hmm.
So boundaries are still, and I think will always be there. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of parenting no matter what, even though she's 37 years old. It's a boundary thing for a
It's
lot, I would
it
say.
needs to be. And I love, so what your answer says is, oh, well, I would get back into treatment myself.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's
Hmm.
what we want because it's a family disease. Let me just open the window and see if there's anybody chatting or has questions for you. So let me say to put those um, in the chat if you do have questions. Dorene seems so calm and centered. Can't imagine her being like I was when I started at Tipping Point. Mike is a superhero. Um, yeah, so were you this calm when you first?
Oh my gosh, no. I mean, uh, it's hard. It's one of those things that I think your subconscious makes you forget because it was so hard.
Yeah.
But I do remember crying a lot. I remember pacing a lot. I remember thinking, "Oh my god, the phone calls. If the phone rang and it was Nicole, I was like, what's going to be at the other end of this phone call?" It was never a happy phone call. And there are times still that I her phone will the ring for her and I'm like, okay, and I have to get and then it's something happy or something good on the other end or it's just normal conversation which I got to tell you hasn't happened in years.
Right.
But yeah, no, a year ago today, I mean, and those ups and downs of thinking that she was going to go in and my husband taking her or my daughter taking her and then she turn around and go home and it was it
Those
was
ups and yeah,
roller coaster.
those ups and downs on your own before you were with.
Oh,
That's the thing that I realized. that a lot of people are doing is they're basing what they do, how they respond on what the addict decides.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's like flinging you around like a boomerang. And you're not wrong for doing that because you're like, oh my God, she said yes. And then everybody jumps around and then
Huh?
they mostly leave treatment because they're so uncomfortable. And if it's just, God, the money that people spend and the
Yeah,
energy, that's what I want to stop, is all that insanity around the ways we try. And not everybody's family is needing this kind of service. Some
correct.
people, loved ones aren't ready.
Mhm.
I just had another thought. Oh, I wanted to share when you were talking about her managing the sober house. When I got sober, I was 50 and I was an alcoholic. I had done plenty of drugs. Cocaine was part of my story in the end, but I'd never touched heroin or a needle. So there was a little bit of a better than going on for me because I thought I
Mhm.
was better than. And when I got to the sober house, I was very, very much not wanting to go. And I
Mhm.
agreed for 2 weeks to stay. And the woman managing the sober house was about your daughter's age, so younger than me, and she had used heroin. So I thought, and she was 8 or 9 months sober. Very similar profile.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, your daughter didn't use that, but in
No.
my
Yeah.
head, I was like, what am I going to learn from her? Like
Uh-huh.
I was, and I thought, now that I know, I actually had, she had 8 months on me. That's what she had. And she had
Yeah.
way more time than me. And it had nothing to do with age or life experience. We're all the same. And I got kicked in the butt with that. I really needed to like get knocked down a couple of pegs and nobody could knock me down. I had to feel that myself.
Yeah.
And I remember, I look back now and I think, wow, was I disrespectful to her? Was I rude? Like, oh my God, that's awful. The second thing I want to say, when you said she would feel we were shaming her.
Yeah.
No matter how nice you are to your alcoholic, if you're family, they're going to feel shamed, even if you're not shaming. Like
Yeah.
you can't do the right thing ever with someone
Yeah.
that's struggling with this
No.
disease. You just, because the way they feel on the inside is so, so awful.
Mhm.
Um, wow. Well, I just absolutely love getting your text messages, from, on how she's doing
Yeah.
because they're so beautiful to read and they make our day. Gail's asking, are interventions available in all areas of the country and rough estimate of cost, which I assume varies by length, not in need personally, but curious for other families. So we do them all over the country. They typically start at $10,000 and go up from there. They are expensive and you can pay less for an intervention. You can also pay more and get, I know people that are charging 15,000 for 1 week. We never give a range because it mostly what matters is distance. We might have to add on a day travel for the interventionist because you're far away. But we haven't done them outside of the country, but we've done them inside the country. And yeah, they're expensive, but so is the problem.
Exactly. And that's what I would say to most everybody because that it is expensive. And we were lucky enough to be able to find funds to do this. Not everybody has that.
Right.
But I have to tell you, it's not one thing that I regret.
Yeah.
The expense is not anything I regret, and I would do it again.
Mm.
But I don't, that's because I know my outcome was this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and on one hand, you get what you pay for. I mean, you could say 5,000, but who's to say that that is what
Right.
is going to work for your family? This worked for us. We put trust in it
Yeah.
and it worked.
And at tipping point, these prices that we're charging are for a 3 month intervention plus a 6 month intensive program for all family members. So I don't know anyone that's offering that. And so, yeah, you get a lot more here than you do in other interventions. And it horrifies me when I hear that they're literally a week long. Anybody can get anybody into treatment for a few days. That is not
Right.
what a family needs, in my opinion. If somebody's super motivated when they get to treatment, then you wouldn't need more. But who is? What alcoholic is
Right.
super motivated? Maybe 1% of us. Um, I'm about getting the family back in shape. And so even if she left treatment 5 times, Doreen, You
Mhm.
might be sitting here saying this was a success, and I would say 100% of the families that have ever hired us to do an intervention, regardless of the outcome, call it a success and money well spent because you're all completely different. And I think we all wish it was the alcoholic's problem only, but it's not. It's
It's
not.
not. It is not. And the other thing is, as parents, I mean, you blame yourself. I don't know how many times Joe and I looked at each other and it's like, what did we do wrong? What could have we done differently? I mean, this was starting at 14 and many, years of all of this. And it was like, you blame yourself, but you taught us not to blame ourselves because honestly, and when you think about it, everybody has free will, you know, what she did and the things that happened to her, it's her life, but it's our loved one. And yeah, I think just us changing and learning how to set boundaries for sure
Right.
and just take that guilt away from us as well
Right.
of blame because we blamed ourselves too, you know?
Right. Someone else just asked, is this covered by insurance and about the cost? So let me say it's not covered by insurance. It absolutely should be because it save insurance companies money because people are cycling in and out of treatment so much. Insurance companies are pouring money at a partial solution. And I also want to say it's not always an intervention that you need. There are multiple services that do the same thing, and based on your loved one's engagement with treatment and their willingness and their connection to you, it can be a form of an intervention, and it can start out. I would say those services probably start more in like the $3,000 to $5,000 range. That's a different scenario, but always opt for a free consultation with us so we can at least tell you what we
Mhm,
think it is and if we can help. And we'll never take on something that we don't think we can help, and we will give you options for sure.
mhm,
At the very least, what I believe every family needs is training, skills training, and education around
mhm,
boundaries and healthy communicating and um, communication that is more connection based rather than like, what were you thinking?
mhm.
What not to be led by our emotions. I mean, I believe every family should be enrolled in the intensive program, but yeah, so let's see. What else did I want to ask you? How have your husband and I mean, I don't want you to speak on behalf of others, but other
Yeah.
people feel the same in your family, your husband
Yes.
and her sister.
Yes. Yes.
So happy.
Everybody,
Yeah.
everyone was very happy with what we did, how it went. No one really has anything negative to say about the process. One thing I wanted to add though is when we're talking expense, um, they're into, going into treatment depends on if they have insurance that's covered, luckily. And Mike worked with that, is the thing. Mike found out what kind of coverage she has, and he talked to the facility because he already knew what her issues were prior to. So picking the right facility and it was covered under her insurance was huge compared to us as
Yeah.
an emotional
Right.
family trying to figure that out.
Right.
So,
Yes. So part of the intervention is choosing the service. And
yeah,
most of the time we can get it covered in insurance. If families say we have money, we can pay for private treatment also, then we might add that to the list of treatments that you
correct.
explore. But no, we've never been able to not find someone treatment. And Mike and Corey are very connected in the world with treatment centers, and they do a lot of research ahead of time so that we're not picking a treatment center based on our interests or needs. We're picking one based on your family members per
Correct.
exact situation, your location, and your insurance. And that is really key. And a big part of the intervention is that he's got a relationship with the treatment center because he gets in the door.
Yep.
And we always make one of the requirements of your loved one saying yes to treatment that they'll sign a release of information for us as well.
That's another one to bring up.
Yeah.
Yes, because we don't, as an adult, she doesn't have to sign any privilege to
No, and
us.
she wouldn't have
It's
given
all
that to you.
private.
Yep.
No, but she signed for Mike, and then Mike could give us updates on how things were going, which was huge for us. I mean, we went to visit her and we got what, we were talking about between us, but we also knew on the back end that things were working so
Right.
well.
Right.
So,
When I hear how many families have hired a lawyer, and not
Mm.
an interventionist or a family case manager. I think it's the same service, right? We hire lawyers because we don't know how to work the court system. We should hire a treatment provider because or an interventionist because our loved one has a disease that they deny. They're so sick, they're getting in their own way, and we're getting in the way inadvertently. So it's a very similar role. I mean, of course, it's not legal, but we get in
Mhm.
the back room.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And I really appreciate it. And I wish for her to not have relapse as part of her journey, but I know that
Yeah.
I love knowing that we're here for you if that ever happened. And I can predict that you could be as calm despite that because now you have a path and she has a path.
Right. Exactly.
And
Absolutely.
you're not in her path by helping with her son. Sometimes
No.
people get that confused. Is that
Right.
enabling? No, you're actually giving him what he needs and you're giving her what she needs.
Right.
And it sounds like there's a timeline on that for you guys.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, sometimes scholarships are available. Definitely, sometimes scholarships are available for our group program. We hire therapists for many areas of our body. Why not this? Agreed.
Mhm.
Um, can you think of anything else you want to let the people know about your journey?
Um, wow, there's just some would I have thought, and it's really funny because last Christmas, the prior to this, just this one we had, was horrible. It was a horrible Christmas with my daughter doing what she was doing. This Christmas, a year later, talking to her and saying, "Can you believe where we're at right now?" She too was like, "No, I would never have known that I could be on this side." She and she's shocked and she's doing so. I mean, she is the person that I knew was always inside there.
Mm.
So, but again, we are all taking one step at a time. Life is, a journey because we just don't know what to expect. I mean, she lost her job during this time frame too because they laid off people. So
Mm.
not only, there were things along the way that happened that could have totally put her back. And, she was in the middle of treatment, which was very helpful. She completed all of it and still, has her when she needs to do whatever, she knows who to go to. So, yeah,
When
just
I've heard so many families say, I don't think we can do this because they could lose their job. I think, well, they're going to lose more than their job if they
that
don't.
was the other thing that she would say. I got to go to work. I'll lose my job. Well, you're not there half the time as it is now because of your situation. But yeah,
I thought I was going to lose my daughter if I went to treatment, but I was
yeah.
available for her anyway at 14.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
none of that makes sense.
Right.
That's just what
Yeah,
the disease does to all of us is it makes us
that's
put things in different priorities than they should be.
mhm.
Um, well, I mentioned this to you before the call, but I'll say it again now. Yes, check with her and see if she's open to chatting with me about coming in to speak at our panel. I would love to have you both. We call you guys a pair, right? A mom and daughter
Yeah,
both recovered and their
yeah.
beautiful journeys. So put her in touch with me on text if she's
Well,
willing. Because I'd love to
uh,
just chat with her. I didn't get to know her in the process
yeah.
and super proud of her and love your family and so grateful and really for coming on here and having the courage to share to people. I really appreciate it so, so much. Are you glad you did this?
Oh, I'm very glad. If you can help other people in their crisis, I mean, we have a good story to tell. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with stories too. So,
Yeah.
but just know there's an end to that tunnel that can be so dark and
Mm,
so hard. Oh, yeah.
I'm so grateful. And when you're in the Facebook group later, you'll see this post because the
Okay.
recording stays there and you can chat with people in the comments because they're going to want to be loving you up. Um,
Okay.
your whole family. Yeah, really, you probably never thought you'd come on a Zoom meeting and stream
No,
Facebook group to share the story.
no, never. I've been
No.
nervous ever since I agreed. I'm thinking, what did I get myself into? Oh my God, what did I get myself into? But
Well,
I
if you're
also want people to know oh my gosh, there's help out there. There is
how do
help
you
when you
feel now that
feel
you
so
did it? How
sick.
do you feel now that you did it?
I feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
feel good.
in AA, when we speak and we're nervous, we come out and we're like, I feel high. It's almost like a high. It's actually a beautiful feeling. So hopefully when you hang up, you'll feel
Yep.
this surge of energy. We joke and we're like, that's the best high I ever had. It does feel good to pay it forward. So, uh,
Good.
yeah,
We'll
thank you.
see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Say hi to Jackie and we'll see you and your husband and we'll see you again.
Okay, bye.
There.